The Misadventures of an Escape Artist, Episode 8. Bonjour la France, Paris and me. A month before leaving for Europe, I met a girl, a friend of the guitarist of the group A Few Colours. She'd come to see us play at a bar in downtown Montreal, and I fell madly in love with her. 4 weeks later, I was on a flight to Paris. Life can be a bitch. When I arrived in Paris, I found a place to live while I took acting classes. It had been a servant's room on the top floor of a 6-story building near the Sacré-Cœur Basilica in Montmartre. The location was fabulous, but at that time of year, still no heating. The nights were freezing, and I was missing the warmth of my girlfriend in more ways than one. In my spare time, I visited the magnificent buildings, churches, and museums. I often spent hours at the Notre Dame Cathedral, mingling with the groups of tourists. I had hardly any money to live on. I would occasionally treat myself to what is called piquette in France, $1 bottle of wine to go with a baguette and a hunk of cheese. I also spent hours reading writers like Victor Hugo, Honoré de Balzac, and Émile Zola. Apart from the time in class, I spent the rest of my days alone. Other than 2 French students, most of my classmates came from wealthy foreign families. There were Germans, Australians, Spaniards, and Italians. Oh, and so many beautiful women. I remember an acting exercise where I was put in a cardboard box for 30 minutes with an incredibly beautiful German girl. I kept reminding myself that I had a girlfriend who was waiting for me back in Montreal. I was shy and a bit sexually inexperienced. When I returned to Montreal, my friends all said how much of an idiot I was to be surrounded by all this beauty and doing nothing. Morning classes consisted of physical exercises. Our teacher wanted us to understand that our bodies were our artistic instruments. I remember one activity in particular. We had to run around the large classroom for several minutes. "Feel the noise and the shaking of the floor and the sounds of your footsteps making on the ground," said the instructor. "I assure you that at the end of our course, in 7 weeks, when you run around the room, we will not hear a sound in the big room. You won't see any movement of the floor. It will be as if you are flying, not touching the ground." 7 weeks later, at the end of the course, we could actually all run as if we were suspended in the air. No movement or sound could be heard in the large hall while we ran. In the afternoon, we had classes with the great theatre professor, Philippe Gaulier. He was very strict and incredibly difficult to impress. I still remember the only time Professor Gaulier noticed me. He had actually applauded my performance. Professor Gaulier had asked me to lie on my back in front of the class. "You're like a little pond. There is no wind, and everything is calm. Take a few minutes to feel a breeze coming in. Now, get up slowly and stand up, keeping your role of a pond as well as your energy." I never said a single word during the exercise. After my performance, everyone applauded. It was a highlight of my training in Paris. The painter. Upon my return to Montreal, I was reunited with my girlfriend and with the jazz band A Few Colours. I moved into a large loft with my cousin Gilles. I also started to play music with an up-and-coming singer-songwriter in Quebec, Martin Lavoie. Martin was originally from Lac-Saint-Jean and composed beautiful lyrics. He was also an artist, a sculptor, and a jewelry maker. At the end of 1986, Gilles had met an old painter. This man had taught Gilles how to paint and how to sell his art door to door. This was an extremely interesting concept because before moving into the loft, we would need a few $1,000s for cleaning and repairs. The loft had 24 windows, an incredible view of Montreal. It was large enough to ride a bike from front to back, but it was in dire need of a good cleaning and repair job. Gilles and I decided to join forces and work as a team to make money. We would become artists. Gilles would draw Quebec country landscapes, occasionally adding a few barns, mountains, and country roads. These paintings were the perfect size for a family living room. They were impressionist paintings in the style of Jean-Paul Lemieux and Marc-Aurèle Fortin, 2 well-known artists. We brought our canvases and frames from a local carpenter. For the paint, we would go to local hardware stores and use gallons of acrylic paint that had been returned. Gilles could paint a canvas in about 30 minutes. For the finishing touch, he would apply a coat of oil. Now we could honestly say that these were oil paintings, when in fact they were acrylic. A painting would cost us, including the canvas, the paint and the frame, about $30. After deciding that Gilles would paint and I would sell, we sold them at an average of $150 per canvas. We bought 2 minivans on credit. I normally left the loft around 3:30 in the afternoon with 20 canvases and frames, which I carried in cloth bags. In each bag I put 5 canvases and unattached frames. I always had a hammer and small nails to mount the paintings I sold. I would leave Montreal and go to a suburban neighbourhood of new houses of 1 or 2 years at most. Some lawns and driveways had just been landscaped, but the owners had not yet decorated their living rooms or bedrooms. I would arrive dressed like an artist, with a beret and dried paint on my clothes. A real painter. Yeah, right. I would park at 4 p.m. to start my door-to-door sales. "Hello, madame, my name is Anton Leroy." I would then present my business card and carry on the bullshit. "I have just finished an exhibition at the Palais de Congrès in Montreal," I would spout off to the homeowner. "I will be leaving the region soon and spend the winter in Charlevoix. I'll stay a few months at Île aux Coudres à la Mer Bay, where I will paint so I can present this winter's work next summer in many North American art galleries. I wanted to take this time to show you and your husband what I have left of my paintings. Would you be available tonight for a showing?" I would make an appointment for 6 o'clock, another 6:30, another for 7, and then 7:30, and so on. I always made sure I was back on the road by 10. In the mid-1980s, pastel shades were the fashionable colour for decorating. I would always arrive with my canvases and unpack them in the living room. I would give the couple a few minutes to look over the paintings, and then take one that I thought they liked and place it against the wall so that they could see the effect. Most of the time, I sold at least one, if not several paintings per home. I explained they could pay for the paintings by check or even a $10 monthly payment if needed. Before I left, I would mount the canvas on the wall. Some nights I would make up to $2,000. Chippendale dancers eat your heart out. After a few weeks of work, Gilles and I had dozens and dozens of checks to deposit for the coming months. With one exception, no check ever bounced. Naturally, I only worked when I really needed the money. I was a good actor, posing as a landscape painter, but keeping up the deception became unnecessary when I moved to Alma to become a pilot. My swan song as an artist. At the beginning of my career as a professional musician, I was really not making enough money to live on, so the sale of paintings was a godsend. Later on, my musical career began to pay off. I composed music for singers and bands, worked as a studio musician, and performed on radio and television. After 2 years of dating my girlfriend, she moved to Rimouski to study marine biology. I would join her on weekends when I was free, and she would come to Montreal to spend time with me in the loft. But then she told me our relationship was over, that she had a new life and new friends in Rimouski. I was heartbroken. She was beautiful, intelligent, fun, and interested in everything. I spent several weeks face down, a Quebec expression which means head buried in the sand, like an ostrich. I worked hard as a musician, and with my theatre group La Envie, we performed the enchanted saxophone in shopping malls, primary schools, city centres, or at children's parties given by large national or international companies. After our tour in Gaspé, our guitarist Pierre was replaced by an excellent Quebecois comedienne and actress, Maria Lavigne. At the beginning of 1987, I began teaching the bass guitar. I had developed my own method of instruction and taught both aspiring and more experienced musicians. I even had a few musicians studying music in university. I introduced the slap bass, which was invented by Larry Graham, the bassist of the band Sly and the Family Stone. Slapping bass is played by hitting the strings with one's thumbs to give a funk to the music. I continued performing and teaching bass until I left Montreal and my loft at the end of 1988. I was once again ready to return to the skies. Fortunately, I had made enough money in the previous few months, enough to return to my career as a pilot. I could now pay for my aviation retraining and regained my professional pilot's license. I was then a pilot for Air Alma in Quebec for 2 years. Later, I flew the Cessna 404 in Africa.